everyone. When it comes to PropTech revolution in India, probably Brigade REAP will go down in the history as an establishment which was ready to put their money and the strength where their mouth is. And the fact they're entering into the 8th cohort and mentored over 30 startups, this showcases that these numbers are great, but it's just a start. And today we have Nirupa Shankar, who has been at the helm of it all. Thank you, Nirupa, for joining us today for Proptech Story Series.
Thanks for having me.
So before I start asking you about the PropTech industry, I really wanted to know what was your objective behind starting Brigade REAP? Do you think our Indian real estate industry is now opening up to finally embrace the PropTech solutions?
So yes, when we started Brigade REAP, it was actually in 2016. That's when there was a huge wave of startups like housing.com and all these online kind of startups in the real estate space getting a lot of traction. Every time I would open the papers, I'd see these huge kind of fundings for a lot of these startups. And I understood that there was something happening in this space. And for instance, like a lot of the valuation for these startups was a lot more than profit-making established companies. So I understood that we wanted to be a part of it as well. And I thought there was no better time about 3-4 years ago to start embracing technology, because real estate is a space which is age-old, but there has hardly been any large-scale technological innovations in the space. It's a very brick-and-mortar manual type of construction, especially in India. So there were a lot of startups coming to Brigade and saying they want to pitch their product. But what I found was that none of them were ready for a plug-and-play model. So they all needed some amount of work, some amount of coaching. And when I say some, it would take quite a few months to sort of get them ingrained into our system, because none of them were just ready for plug-and-play solutions. They needed to be coached. Their model had to be changed. And that's when I realized, see, my team currently, which is so tied up in operations, would not have the time to coach and handhold these startups. They want a ready-made solution. So that's when we decided to set up a specific team, to sort of mentor these startups, get them ready for a plug-and-play solution. Because most people and most developers have too many other projects on their hands to mentor these startups. But there were still startups with good products, they were good ideas, and I didn't want to miss out on any of them. So we said, okay, why not set up a specific team to just go through all the people that are coming, go through all the applications or the email requests that are coming to us, see how good their product or solution is, and then see if we could mentor them to create a plug-and-play solution for, say, Brigade. And if once it was done for Brigade, it's very easy for them to grow to grow their customer base or go to other real estate companies and say, hey, I've done this for Brigade. These are my solutions. Would you like to try it too? So that was the objective, to basically not miss out on any good ideas or technology in the space.
So do you think real estate industry, especially in India, is now ready to embrace these PropTech solutions?
Yes. So when we started in 2016, it was a little tough. There were a lot of people kind of interested, but not willing to sort of pay for some of the technological solutions. Then I think it started getting a bit of traction because people started seeing value add to what these startups are doing, because we try to focus on startups that could either help companies reduce their costs or increase their revenue or make them more efficient. So, I mean, which company wouldn't want any of those three solutions, right? So then people started coming to us. What also helped was RERA, because with RERA, transparency had to increase. Real estate developers had to start ensuring that they construct on time. So they needed more data and transparency in their current processes to ensure that there were no surprise roadblocks. So with RERA, again, there were more interest in the startups, and now post-COVID, I foresee a significant increase in the interest of using technology, because all of us, as you well know, we're trying to work from home, trying to optimize our time, trying to cut costs wherever we can. And what better time to use technology than now?
Agreed. So how Brigade REAP is helping the PropTech companies when it comes to, like, the ones which are under the accelerator program, when it comes to reaching out to the developers, the mentoring part, even to make these companies have a global appeal as well?
Yeah. So there are multiple aspects to your question, so I'll try to break it down. So the first part is, from first and foremost is the selection process, right? So we do 2 batches a year. And we have a very lengthy and I would say exhaustive selection process, because we don't want to land up spending too much time on a startup that is not yet ready to be taken to market. So first of all, we take slightly more advanced stage startups, one where the idea is done, where they probably have some paying customers as well, but say they want to go from point A to point B, and they need help in exponential growth. That's where we come in. So we don't come in at the ideation stage, because sometimes ideation could take a year and a half. We want startups that already have a product somewhat tested. Maybe they have an investor, like an angel investor, and then we want to scale them up exponentially. So first we have a screening process to see which are the startups that are slightly more mature that we could start incorporating. Right. Then we have a filtration process where we speak to them. Usually we get about 125, 150 applications per batch, and our goal is to select the top 5. And then we have a selection process with outside people, like our partners with Cisco or Intel or Microsoft. So they come and help us select companies that have good technology at the back end. And then we have another round of final selection where even our chairman gets involved. So the Brigade chairman, Mr. Shankar, gets involved. He's part of the selection process. Our head of engineering is there. Private equity players are there just to see, are these companies, do they have the ability to scale up? So the selection process is very stringent. And I think that's part of why the accelerator has been successful so far. It's like going to Harvard, right? Like you go to Harvard, Harvard picks the top cream of the students graduating from a certain class. And so they're bound to be successful. They already have some characteristics about them that make them successful. And that's part of the reason why our startups have also been so successful. The second part is obviously the team. Like we have a really phenomenal team at Brigade REAP with our mentors, John Kuruvilla, Gautam, who you know, Apol Nahata, and Rajiv Nair. So they've all worked in the industry. They've had startup exposure themselves. They've set up their own startups. So they've been there, done that. They know exactly what needs to be done. They're able to coach people, guide them on whatever aspect, whether it's legal, accounting, sometimes it's relationship management. You might have a father-son duo startup coming in. You might have a husband-wife startup. There are issues that come up even with that. So the team is well versed in sort of addressing all these issues, not just the funding or the business plan or an accounting or legal issue. So the second part is the team. And I would say the third winning factor for Brigade REAP is that Brigade senior leadership, from the chairman to myself to top down, we are all very keen to adopt technology into our business, because that is the way of the future. We don't want to be left behind. Yeah. And our senior leadership, like our head of design, will look at the startups related to design. Our head of business development will look into startups like drones, maybe to help them do topographical surveys of certain lands. Our head of engineering will look at, startups that relate to his function of work. So right. All our senior leadership gets involved, and we work with these startups, give them live projects to work on. So it's easy. So they might have a lot of issues that come up initially. So you work through the issues, try to figure out solutions with them, and slowly build up a more workable business model for them. Right. Like I said, once you say, hey, I've been there, done that, I know these are the problems that can come across in a live project, it's very easy for people to want to try your solution next. So we are essentially the guinea pigs also for a lot of the new technologies that are in the market.
So nowadays, we are seeing a lot of accelerator programs coming into India. Brigade REAP, yes, has been there in the past. But when we see now these accelerator programs coming in, a lot of PropTech companies which are selected under these programs, whom we have met and discussed, they had told us they seem to be lost because either those programs have not started, or either because the kind of technology they provide or come up with, they don't get the right expertise or guidance from that particular program. So how does Brigade REAP make sure? Because people think when it comes to PropTech, it might be only one solution, but there are a lot of plethora of solutions. So how does Brigade REAP make sure that each PropTech company receives the right guidance, the right expertise, and the right mentorship?
Yeah, so when we set up the program, one of the key foundations of the program was to have focus in the real estate space, because we're in the business of real estate, and this is our bread and butter, and this is a domain that we know completely inside out.
Yeah.
This is what we do day in and day out, and so we said we can add most value in the real estate space. There's no point in us taking on startups in pharma or biotech or whatever it is, because what value can we add to it? The objective of REAP, like I said, was very clear. It was, how do you bring in technology into the real estate space? And as a company, how do we embrace technology to ensure that we're always ahead of the curve? So that was the main objective with which we started Brigade REAP. And I think the fact that we were focused only on real estate, and when we started, like I said, we were only the second accelerator possibly in the world that was focused on real estate. And a lot of MNCs noticed that and wanted to partner with us, because companies like Cisco, Intel, Microsoft, they all have solutions for the real estate space. And they were keen to tie up with a company like ours, or an accelerator like ours, which was helping bridge their technologies using the startup technology and the developer. So it made sense for a lot of MNCs to tie up with us. And once you have that kind of focus, right, it's very easy to become the go-to person in the industry. So anybody in the real estate space or having a solution for the real estate industry, just without thinking, knows that they can just come to us and understand if they are a good fit for the program, or get some mentorship or guidance on the way forward for them. Yes, what was the second part of the question?
So the second part was same thing, how they will, like different solutions which are coming up from the PropTech domain, how you make sure that they receive the right mentorship, the right expertise, because every domain needs to be treated differently, needs to have different mentor, cannot have the one generic person to be as an expert.
So again, while I say we're focused on real estate, we could have solutions like augmented reality, virtual reality, which can be applicable to multiple industries, not just real estate, but it has a use for the real estate industry as well. Like I said, our senior leadership gets very involved. So all the heads of all the verticals, whether it's design or marketing or sales or engineering or HR, will get very involved in each of the startups. If they get through the selection process. So like I said, we have a stringent selection process, and only those startups where we believe we can actually use the technology will we take on board. Once we decide that, hey, we can use you, we get the relevant function head to come and sort of mentor those startups. Apart from that, as I mentioned, our team has been there, done that. John himself has set up his own real estate PropTech firm way back when. So they all understand the key elements of creating a new company, of starting up, and the potential failures possible, because it's not only having success, right? I think you learn most through your failures as well. So they're able to guide the startups on all the basics of exponential growth. But if some key technical stuff is required, then the Brigade team is always there to help.
No, that's great to know, because each expert brings their own experience also, and having the right expert on board, it actually helps a startup to grow, and it makes them realize what challenges they can come across. And of course, such programs like how Brigade REAP has made sure from the beginning till now entering into cohort 8, you guys have come up with different solutions that is helping in the real estate market on the current basis in India. So when we talk about PropTech industry, do you think Indian PropTech companies have seen the growth or the investment and exposure in comparison to the international PropTech companies?
So I think India does lag slightly behind what is happening in the US. A lot of the times the kind of startups we see are probably trying to ride off the coattails of successful startups in the US or the more developed countries, which is fine, because because all it shows is that, hey, I'm using a tested solution in a developed country and coming to a more nascent market like India and trying to ensure that we have a solution, but it's always customized to the Indian market. So we are slightly behind in terms of technological adoption, but like I said, that could even be, if you look at the mobile phone usage, right, for say online or e-commerce. We are behind even in that from, say, all the developed countries, whether it's Europe or US or Korea, South Korea, which all have extensive mobile usage. So we are a few years behind,
Right.
but I think that gap is shortening with every passing year. So we won't have to go through the same learning curve.
Right. So during this COVID time, what we have noticed that Indian
One more thing, sorry, Kritika, one more thing. Actually, to your previous question about the startups and the accelerators and the number of accelerators that are coming on board, I just wanted to add that, you know, a lot of the new accelerators that are coming into the market, right? They could, for instance, be restricted only to, say, funding, or they could be giving only space, or they could be using their accelerator service for their own in-house use. So again, one distinguishing thing about what we do is that while we are the guinea pigs for the technology, our idea is to take these technologies out into the market, and not just for ourselves, it's for the industry as a whole. Because there's no point in only one company using technology. It has to have, the entire industry has to embrace it if we are to see positive change across the industry. So we are not using it, keeping it only for in-house use. We want these startups to grow. We want them to get business, whether it's from competitors or tier 2 developers or tier 3 city developers, that's fine. And our gamut of expertise is not limited to just, say, funding or one specific aspect, right? We're doing everything from A to Z, as I mentioned: legal, PR, accounting, business plan, business model, and we help with fundraising, of course, which is what most startups want, apart from getting more customers.
Those are the few startups which I have already interacted when it comes to Brigade REAP. For example, we got, or Prop VR, and there are so many whom we had even interviewed in past. They all spoke one thing which I noticed was the right exposure which they got in terms of not just the mentorship, but to know how to even pitch to an investor, which is very important. Very few people tell you, okay, this is not the right way to go. There's no one in the market which will tell you, okay, this is how your pitch needs to be. This is how you need to prepare yourself, which I'm sure Brigade REAP is helping a lot to these companies to raise fund, which is an essential part. People think you go out and just raise fund, but there's a process to it. And that way, I think Brigade REAP is helping the startups, even the startups which are not aware, who are in this early stage, to have that kind of broader outlook to the investor point of view, even to the market point of view.
Yeah, because the proof is in, the proof is in eating it, right? Because when last year, there were almost 4 or 5 PropTech awards, like JLL had one, CBRE had one, NASSCOM had one, somebody else had something else. And all the winners, you know, our startups, I think in JLL or CBRE, I forget which one, the top 1st, 2nd, and 3rd winners were all from REAP. And even JLL had a couple of, I think 2 of our startups were in their top 3 as well. And one of the main reasons is also in presenting your idea properly, presenting the solution. So I think that pitch is super important, because most of these awards, right, you have like 10 minutes to pitch. If you can't get across your idea the right way, and same with investors, if you can't communicate what service you are what service and what value add you can bring to the table, you've lost an opportunity. So that's one of the, it's a very important factor of what we do in the mentorship program as well.
No, I agree, because as you said in JLL, like I was there present, they gave like 5 minutes to present. And you could actually bifurcate and see who is from the Brigade REAP. Like I met Abhilash from WeGot, and he was very precise. Like in like 4.5 minutes, he closed his pitch. Otherwise, a lot of people were extending beyond 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So he told us that, making such pitches and how to approach the mentors helped him. So that's why he was not going through each and every slide. Like he knew what is the focus, where to talk about, and how to grab that kind of attention. Yeah. So during this COVID time, we have seen real estate, being more open to adapting technology. But don't you think Indian real estate is still behind, as we discussed, in comparison to global real estate market in the adaptation of technology?
See, I think the key aspect was people were not willing to pay for certain technologies, right? See, when you're used to doing things the way they are, it's getting you the kind of returns that you are expected to get or that you have been getting. Why bother fixing something that isn't broken, right? So I wouldn't say the system is not broken, but eventually people have to start improving what they do if they want to enhance their market share. Um, Business is getting extremely difficult, obviously with RERA and the kind of compliances developers have to keep up with. It's adding to our costs and obviously shaving our margins. Right now, the moment that happens, you have to find ways to start cutting your costs or becoming more efficient. So especially now, post COVID, there are so many new technologies that are coming up that we will have to start using. For instance, in our malls which were severely affected.
Right.
One of the largest expenses on a monthly basis is your security costs. Sometimes you'd have 80 people in a mall just managing all the different exits and entry points, and every floor would have multiple security guards, and we have to reduce this. There's nobody is willing to kind of bear those kind of costs anymore. So you might have to start using cameras and facial recognition software or behavioral pattern kind of prediction, behavior prediction kind of software. So new technologies will come that the real estate space will have to start using. Same for the hotel industry. So we'll have to start cutting down on quite a bit of our day-to-day costs. Like housekeeping is another huge, massive expense. Maybe you start have to use small robots to keep cleaning all the time, find ways to keep the bathrooms clean and sanitized. Yeah. Obviously, the whole sanitization department is another whole exercise. Right. So new technologies will keep coming and we'll have to keep adopting and be agile in adopting new technology if you want to be in business or stay ahead of the curve. It's extremely tough times now, so people will want to use as much technology as possible. Just to give you an example, now all of us are working from home. Number of site visits have reduced. Now, how do you keep track of the kind of work that's happening in the site? You will have to start using drone technology. You'll have to have drones with cameras monitoring the kind of work happening, because you can't have 20 people visiting the site like we used to do. Everybody used to go on one day, go visit a site, figure out all the problems. Yeah. Now we'd have to see it via camera on our computer, have people on the same platform, discuss the problems, see the progress. So we'll have to start adopting technology because the way of doing business will change. And in fact, you might find a way to become more efficient in the process. So not all problems, you don't know, they have the light at the end of the tunnel. There's a silver lining to problems as well. So I think in a way, post-COVID, it will be good for REAP, and I can't, as terrible as it has been for business, I think we'll all be forced to use technology post this.
No, I agree, because the few PropTech webinars which I had, and I personally am like a cheerleader for PropTech industry. So they had told us clearly that earlier they were chasing the developers. Now during the COVID time, they are realizing, what they were providing, those solutions were already there. But during this time when you're not able to go out, you need to have these solutions. You need to have those immersive experience, be virtual tours for your selling of
yes.
be sales and automation in the marketing department. All these are very important. Yes, I think real estate will still see that more of adoption of technology will happen, but I still feel there's still a gradual process to it, because again, everyone is bit not, I think when it comes to technology and when it comes to their own CRM, their own inbuilt technology, everyone is a bit skeptic. So I think more information if starts coming and they understand this is for their benefit only.
I think you mentioned PropVR, you're familiar with that company, right? So going from a nice to have, it becomes a must have, right? Exactly. So when it's a nice to have, people are not that willing to pay for it. They think, okay, do a free demo for me. Let's try it out on a trial basis.
Right.
But now post this, from going from a nice to have becomes a must have product, and people will be willing to pay for it, because now people don't want to go to sites for site visits. Yeah. And everything has to happen online. People want a 3D feel, because just looking at a picture is not good enough. They want a 3D feel. And what better way than virtual reality to help you with that?
Agreed. So what I've been noticing when it comes to B2B or B2C PropTech startup from India, turning into unicorn. We are not able to see them turning into unicorn, to be precise. Even B2C brands like B99 Acres or MagicBricks, they are finding it tough to, go post 200 or 250 crore revenue. And when already the real estate market is so big. Internationally, we have seen Zillow, Realtor.com, which are pushing the envelope with the innovation and technologies. So what do you feel which is still holding us back? I know I'm been asking again, but I've been seeing these market, as you said, when you started, you saw housing and everything. Every company which is coming into the Indian real estate, the opportunity we are seeing in real estate in India is huge. Like it's been there and it's getting bigger and everything. But I still feel something is holding us back in terms of technology or in terms of you might add on to it. What is not making us in the real estate market to become a unicorn in the making?
Yeah, so see, B2B is not as sexy as B2C, first of all, right? Because only when you are B2C, it's a sexy business. You're reaching out. You have huge marketing spends. You need a financier with deep pockets to help you with B2C.
Right.
That said, we like the B2B business because that's what helps. Enterprise solutions is what will help our business, right? And what I can say is that while B2B you may not find as many unicorns, but eventually, they're probably the safer businesses, I would say. Because first of all, just look at how many unicorns India has. I don't know that exact number, but what is it, a dozen or so?
Right.
So it will take time for enterprise-wide solutions to become unicorns, but it is harder because these are less sexy businesses and they have fewer people funding those kind of businesses, and people, they might grow slightly slower because their scale, maybe, like I said, it's for businesses and not like the customer base. So the number of businesses you can tackle is lower than the number of consumers you have, right? Trying to target, say, entire city of Bangalore from a consumer perspective, the number of people you're reaching out to is much more than, say, a handful of businesses for your enterprise-wide solution. So it is slightly harder for B2B businesses to become unicorns. It's easier for the B2C businesses, but we are focused more on B2B because one, they're sustainable, they have unit economics, they're less risky, and I think a larger percentage of them succeed. In B2C, you might see the ones that have succeeded, but for everyone that succeeded, there could be 1,000 that have not succeeded as well. So you need to look at the number of so-called successful, and when I say successful, I mean profit-making companies. As part of the entire B2B market versus profit-making companies in B2C versus the entire market, you'll find that B2B has a higher ratio of profit-making companies. May not be unicorns, but healthy enough.
Agreed. So, like in terms of investment point of view, even in terms of raising fund, we have seen more on B2C front of PropTech companies, gated communities, for example. There are a lot of gated communities. For example, be MyGate. Let's talk about it. They have raised a lot of fund. People are talking about how it might be the next brand in making when it comes to PropTech. But do you see such kind of investment happening for the B2B companies? Such kind of funding are we able to get those kind of funding? Which you rightly pointed, B2C is very easy. People, I would say easy, but you are able to get those kind of deeper pockets and everything. But do you see B2B market is also getting that kind of funding?
See, I think a lot of investors who are attracted to B2C like this kind of exponential growth that they see with B2C companies, right? And MyGate probably started off as it was B2B2C, so now it's gone to all customers. But before it started off as a B2B product, developers were their first clients. And what I would, there is funding. There is a lot of people willing to fund B2B as well, but probably not in the same scale as B2C because, first of all, 80% of B2C kind of companies, their funding goes into marketing, just getting market share, and that may not be required for B2B. B2B may not require those kind of fundings just yet, but people have shown interest in so many of our startups, right? 40% of our 30 startups have received funding, which is much higher than the average for an accelerator. Maybe an average percentage of funding for an accelerator is maybe 10%, which does across B2C, across industries, whatever it is. Out here, 40% have received it because they kind of safe bets and they have unit economics under control. They're growing in a scalable and sustainable manner. So for instance, water management is a big one. Like, we got now energy management is big. Anything on the sustainable front is big. For instance, looking at your facility management, trying to control your facility management through building management software. What else? There is renovation companies that are kind of again B2C. So renovating any house, and house is a pain, right? You have to call your carpenter's a different guy, electrician is a different guy, plumber is a different guy. So there are companies like Renovate in part of Brigade REAP that will do everything for you.
Technology, I think Quick Spec. It's more on the B2B.
Yeah, Quick Spec honestly, it's such a helpful solution for a developer because you're monitoring your construction progress, like snags. We have in many of our projects we almost used to have like 100 snags per apartment. And when I say that is, tiny things like, oh, there's a scratch here, there's a paint mark there. Before handing over to a customer, you might have 100 snags per apartment. We've brought it down to 1 or 2 per apartment. And yes, with the help of Quick Spec as well, but obviously improving our own quality processes. So, I mean, it depends. I don't know. I've never encouraged the startups to just go after, eventually becoming a unicorn is a valuation business.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't believe in chasing valuation. You can, the highs are really high, but the lows can be really low as well. I mean, look what happened to WeWork and things like that. You want a business that's sustainable. So personally, we have always encouraged the B2B sector because we like that sector. We can adopt that sector. And for all the other reasons that I mentioned, there's no point. I mean, we won't be able to go after and fund a B2C kind of a business by ourselves for sure. We had one company, Aapka Painter, they got which kind of goes and paints houses as long as you give it to. So they got funding as well. Okay. They're growing exponentially, but it's not a product that say Brigade can use. Maybe our customers can use it. So again, they tried B2B, but have decided that B2C is their model. And good for them. Yes, we don't have unicorns. And honestly, that's not something we're chasing. I'm happy if these companies become $250 million companies. I'm happy with that. And eventually it's also what is the value add you're adding and to how many people, right? Like say, a lot of the listing companies that you mentioned, eventually it's a brokerage kind of a solution. It's online, it's e-commerce. It's not technologically, it's not deep technology, it's just e-commerce. So maybe there's a limitation due to that as well.
See, personally, I believe that people need to break this perception that if you have raised that kind of funding, you're a successful company. What I feel is PropTech companies also in that domain should feel the kind of revenue they are churning, the kind of, as you said, a sustainable model they have. That should be the focus, because right now what we are seeing, the hype is more on the fact that, oh, this particular company got that kind of funding and it's a very successful company, which is a wrong perception that I completely believe. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, like I mentioned, becoming a unicorn company would be fantastic for any of these startups to become unicorns. I mean, I'd be over the moon, but it's not something you chase, right? It's something that happens as a byproduct of all the hard work that you put in. It's something that will happen eventually, but first you have to focus on your basics. That cannot be your end goal. Becoming the unicorn is not your end goal. Adding value should be your first priority. Becoming a must-have solution in the real estate space should be, again, a top priority. Making your business having positive economic unit economics is the third aspect of it. Finding a way to sustainably grow month on month is again a huge aspect of it. So all of us at Brigade REAP, we are more focused on sustainable growth rather than looking at chasing valuation. That's eventually becoming a unicorn is all about valuation. It's what an investor is willing to pay for a certain stake. That's it. And doesn't mean that you're profit making, doesn't mean that you have the ability to last X number of months if that funding dries out.
Yeah.
And we are trying to make companies that are built to last. It's not about uh,
And that's
chasing valuation.
I agree that
Sorry.
I,
Yeah.
I agree to that. That's the future, because it's, I won't say it's easy to raise fund, but it's very hard to sustain a company, still get the revenue out of it, make sure you're evolving with your with the time, with your technology and everything. That will last longer than like any funding you raise.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the companies that have raised so much of money in the B2C business and look at the losses that they're making, right? I mean, I don't want to get into names, but I mean, there's enough news on the
Yeah,
companies that we use every day that are in such massive losses. That's not exciting to me, quite frankly. It's not exciting to me because when the funding dries up, where are you going to be left? You're going to be left high and dry. So you're banking on the next person funding you and hopefully at a higher amount.
right.
But the kind of losses that a lot of these companies that I personally use myself, I mean, it's not something I would be comfortable with if I were running a company, or if these kind of startups lead into such massive losses. It's not something we'd be very comfortable with. So we prefer that, they're able to sustain on themselves, because a lot of us founders have put in their entire life savings into these startups.
Yeah,
And you want to ensure that they're making money out of it as well. That they can scale over the years. And let's see where that takes us, because we always guide them and say that, don't chase valuation. That's not the key aspect. Obviously, when you're fundraising, you will try to get them the best valuation that they can get, but it has to be it will be a fair valuation, may not be over the top.
yeah.
It'll Yeah, and even the kind of P guys that we sort of partner with are the very sensible partners, who ask us a lot of tough questions, and I can guarantee you, if these companies were loss making, many of them would not have received funding and we would not have been at 40%.
I agree to that. So, though you would have seen a lot of startups and you have mentored so many, is there any particular, particular field that you feel the need gap is still there, which needs to be taken care in terms of when it comes to real estate market?
So one thing I personally would like to see is in predictive analytics. What I mean by that is, suppose somebody comes to your website, okay, they ask, or they call your call center, ask a few questions, or they check your Facebook, just to see if a company that can track various consumer patterns and then sort of predict who is the most likely customer to buy. So that way the sales team knows exactly who to go after.
Right.
Or for instance, there are one or two companies doing that. We haven't been able to successfully utilize their services just yet. And for instance, say in the leasing market or the rental market or the retail rental market, it's to see, okay, these are the office buildings coming up. These are the kind of rentals that they're charging. This is the kind of traction certain micro markets are getting. Maybe on the next deal, you can ask for XYZ rent.
Yeah.
That kind of predictive analytics, sort of guiding the team members using a lot of data to see, to help us with sales, because in the end all of us here are trying to increase our revenues. Potentially what I mentioned earlier with the mall business, we do use cameras, but right now we have people like ex-cops or people trained in behavioral analytics to watch people's behavior inside the malls to see if they are behaving in a suspicious manner or not.
Okay.
But like I said, that's very intensive human requirement, and people will have shorter attention spans. But if say some of the cameras that you have within the malls already installed in all the malls, if they can get smarter and start to predict odd behavior from a security perspective, I think that would be very interesting for us to use.
For sure. And
And
that,
even from a city perspective, right? I mean, imagine if the cops, if the police force in the city had such kind of predictive behavioral analytics, cameras and AI to sort of go through all that data. That would be very cool.
that's
One more thing is potentially, I mean, this is something that I've been wanting to do, or wanting to find a solution for ever since I started REAP. It was to look at material sciences, to see if there are kind of, because of the cement that we use, if there is a way to incorporate some sort of nanotechnology into the cement to avoid, any waterproofing issues or to avoid leakages. Because if you ask me, that is probably the biggest pain and the bane of our existence in the real estate space. If any apartment or building will have some leakage issue or some waterproofing issue, that will need to be rectified. So ideally, I would say, like, I would love to see more research in the material sciences space using nanotechnology. There is a lot of research happening in the Indian Institute of Science, but a lot of the solutions have gone for, say, patenting, so we don't have access to it yet.
Yeah.
Or it's very hard to use it on a mass scale. I may be able to use it on because of the cost in one or two areas, but I'm not able to use it in mass scale. So I think material sciences, using nanotech in material sciences, understanding
Would be
if
very
we can remove the waterproofing issue. I think that has been a problem for most people who buy apartments. So if we can solve that, I think it'll be a game changer.
So I know Brigade REAP startup companies which are under your accelerator program must be very close. You must be close to all of them. But if I have to ask you, you need to choose three and what you believe. I know we have discussed on the unicorn in making, but what you feel these three startups has those potential at least to look out for, that maybe they be in the unicorn in making kind of race, or you feel they have that kind of potential to grow much bigger?
Like you said, very hard to choose, and it would be unfair for me to do so. Like you said, we like all the startups in the program because obviously we've selected them, we've spoken to them, we are mentoring them, we're guiding all of them. But currently, where I see great amount of untapped potential, I see a lot of untapped potential for all of our startups. But since if you want me to narrow it down to just three or just pick any three, I'll just choose three in very different spaces. But for instance, we're focusing a lot on the sustainability side of things. Like we actually have almost 8 to 10 startups just focused on on creating sustainable developments. So as you know, like which is in the water monitoring space, is helping us save a lot of water. There's EcoSTP in the sustainable space, which is creating sewage treatment plants that don't require electricity or maintenance. There is Smarter Dharma that does consulting for all developers, or from A to Z. They will tell you how to build a more eco-friendly, zero carbon footprint building. So I love all those solutions. I think they're great solutions. Personally, I've always liked, like you said, there is some sort of sexy appeal to B2C, and I do think there is scope to make life easier for people. See, in the end, what is technology there for? It's a tool, and it has to make life easier for customers or anybody, right? I mean, you want a solution that will make life easier for you. So for that reason, I like Renovate, because I myself have renovated my apartment multiple times, and it's a real pain. Even though you're in the building space, it's a real pain to deal with so many people. Lighting is separate, and plumbing, electrical, everybody's a different vendor. There's no proper turnkey solution provider that I have found yet. So I think Renovate has the ability to do that. And I think if they get their model right and become a turnkey solution provider for small time renovations, they can go big. I like Props AMC because they're doing a bit of the predictive analytics that I told you. So it hasn't gotten to a stage where they're actually suggesting what you need to put, but they have so much of data available that they can start telling you, hey, this micro market is trending at what rate for office rentals, for instance. So I like data companies as well. And last one, if I had to pick, probably like you said, virtual reality is so important at this point in time. And I'm saying because of COVID specifically, we'll have to use a lot of VR to make sales. So I would look at those 4 companies which I mentioned.
Great. So the last, before I wrap up the series, I wanted to know who has been your role model? What has kept you inspiring when it comes to this PropTech domain?
So I have a fairly cliched answer. So honestly, my parents are my role model. My father specifically, because he's the chairman of the company, and he's a true visionary. He's really a visionary person. He thinks way ahead of his time. And when setting up Brigade REAP, I had to present this to the my board of directors to see if I could go ahead with the proposal, get certain funding for it. And it's not easy. We are not the largest player in the market, and we, as a player of our size, we had to set aside certain funds, set aside certain human effort and capital towards it. And the board went ahead with it, and he was my biggest supporter. And he's always been a visionary when it comes to real estate. So, and I can't have asked for a better role model. And he does a good job of separating fatherly duties from being my boss, because he's a tough boss as well. So it's important, right? You have to learn from your boss, and I think that's something I've always looked for. And I can't find a better teacher, quite frankly. And I've learned more from him than I did in my MBAs. So whatever the MBAs don't teach you, my father has taught me. So obviously.
So one very last important thing I want to know: young entrepreneurs who are trying to enter into PropTech industry or who have just started their journey, what would be your advice to them?
I would say, go after a problem that exists. If you have, say, bought an apartment, or you are, obviously most of us are living in apartments or developed by a builder or whatever it is, you see your day-to-day problems that you have, right?
Yeah.
And you know what your problems are on a day-to-day basis. So try to find practical solutions, because if you have a problem with your apartment, or say you're buying process, and you think something could have been better, then try to find a solution for that. Because if you've faced it, then probably many other people have also faced it.
Yeah.
So try to find a solution for a burning problem that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
And just not a nice to have solution. Try to make it a must have solution, a solution that people are willing to pay for. There's no point in coming up with the solution and then saying, hey, it's for free. People should be willing to pay for your solution, and how much they're willing to pay speaks about the quality of the solution that you're providing. Because the more that somebody's willing to pay for a product, that means the harder the harder the problem it is trying to solve. So I would say, try to find solutions to practical problems that already exist, because like I said, if you're going through it, then maybe there will be many other people going through it. So it's much easier than to connect with people on why your solution is an important one.
So thank you so much, Nirupa, for joining us on today's Proptech Story Series. It was wonderful to have you and to know more about Brigade REAP. I've been always admiring how you started this whole accelerator program, because as I said, I'm a personal cheerleader. So I keep on noticing what PropTech companies are coming, and I keep talking to them if this program is helping them. But I have heard wonderful things about Brigade REAP, and I hope you keep continuing this journey and more PropTech great companies come out of your accelerator program.
Great. Thank you so much. It was lovely speaking with you. Very well-researched interview, I must say. So thank you so much, because you're the first person I've spoken to who knows so much about our startup. So it's nice that you could research about them, and good that you've spoken to them before I could tell you about them. So you had a lot of background to whatever we were talking about. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Nirupa. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.